Emily and James had built a peaceful life in Bristol. Their home was filled with laughter and warmth, shared with their 2 children. Every morning, Emily would prepare breakfast as James read the newspaper. The days felt simple but full of comfort. They knew the importance of routine, of stability. James worked as an architect, often busy with designs and meetings, while Emily managed the household and occasionally painted in her spare time. Their bond appeared unshakable. Yet beneath the calm surface, Emily sensed a restlessness in James that she could not explain. One afternoon, as Emily was tidying the living room, the phone rang. It was Sarah, someone from James's past. Sarah, who lived in Manchester. The voice on the other end was tentative, almost hesitant. Sarah said she needed to speak with James. Something had changed in her life, and she hoped to find support. Emily listened quietly, a strange feeling settling deep inside her. She had never met Sarah, yet somehow she felt an invisible thread pulling at her heart. That evening, James mentioned Sarah's call. He sounded distant but insisted there was nothing to worry about. Emily wanted to believe him, but a seed of doubt had been planted. As night fell over Bristol, Emily found herself awake, staring at the ceiling. The peaceful life she had known suddenly seemed fragile, as if on the edge of an unseen storm. The next morning, Emily could not shake the unease that had settled over her. Breakfast was quiet, the usual chatter between her and James was replaced by silence. James seemed distracted, often glancing at his phone and responding to messages with a curtness Emily did not recognize. Later that day, a knock at the door startled Emily. She opened it to find Sarah standing there, her face pale and eyes weary. Sarah's presence was unexpected, and Emily struggled to find words. "Hello, Emily," Sarah said softly. "I hope it's all right, I came without warning. I needed to speak with James." Emily invited her in, though a knot tightened in her stomach. The children were playing upstairs, unaware of the tension that had suddenly filled their home. When James returned, his face shifted at the sight of Sarah. There was a brief moment of silence between the two before James cleared his throat. "Sarah, it's been a long time," he said, though his voice lacked warmth. "What brings you here?" Sarah took a deep breath. "James, I've come because I don't have anywhere else to turn. Since David left, I've been struggling. I thought, maybe you could help me understand things." Emily watched the exchange quietly, sensing layers of history and emotion beneath the surface. The man she thought she knew suddenly seemed distant, caught between past and present. Throughout the afternoon, Emily observed their interactions, the hesitant glances, the careful choice of words. Sarah's vulnerability was clear, but so was the effect her presence had on James. He was no longer the attentive husband she had known. That night, Emily lay awake again. Questions swirled in her mind. Who was Sarah really? What was she hoping to find in Bristol? And why had James never spoken of her before? The walls of their home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a stage for secrets waiting to be uncovered. Days passed, but the atmosphere in the house remained tense and fragile. Emily found herself watching James more closely, noticing the small changes, the furrowed brow when he thought no one was looking, the restless pacing by the window late at night, the silences that stretched longer than usual. She wanted to ask him directly what was happening, but every time the words came close, she held back. There was something about James's behavior that unsettled her deeply, yet she feared what the answers might be. One rainy afternoon, while James was out on a rare day off, Emily decided to explore the box of old letters and photographs she had found in the attic a few days earlier. The box was dusty and worn, filled with memories from years ago. Among the letters were notes written by Sarah, full of passion and longing, addressed to James. Some were answered, some were not. Emily read through the letters carefully. They told a story of a love that had once burned fiercely but had been left unresolved. There were mentions of plans, dreams, and heartbreaks. The more she read, the clearer it became that Sarah had been a significant part of James's life, a part he had never fully shared with her. Her heart ached, not just from jealousy or betrayal, but from a profound sadness. She wondered how many secrets lay hidden beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect marriage. That evening, James returned home late. Emily waited for him in the living room, the box of letters on the table between them. When James saw it, his face paled. "Emily," he began cautiously, "there are things I never told you because I thought it was best to leave the past behind." She looked up at him, steady and calm. "I want to understand, James. I need to know what you're hiding." James sighed deeply, the weight of years pressing down on his shoulders. "Sarah and we were young. I thought I had moved on, but some wounds don't heal as easily as I hoped. Her coming back has stirred everything I tried to forget." Emily listened, torn between hurt and empathy. She realized this was not just about a past love, but about James's struggle with his own regrets and fears. As the night grew darker, the distance between them seemed to shrink, if only slightly. But Emily knew this was only the beginning of a journey that would test everything they had built together. The days that followed brought a shift in the household. James became more withdrawn, spending long hours at the office or walking alone through the quiet streets of Bristol. Emily watched silently, her mind a whirlwind of questions and worries. She wanted to confront him, to demand the truth, but she also feared pushing him further away. Sarah's presence lingered like a shadow. Emily saw James answering her messages in secret, his expression torn between duty and guilt. Every time Emily tried to speak about Sarah, James would change the subject or offer vague reassurances. One evening, Emily found herself in the small local cafe where she often painted. She tried to focus on the colors and shapes, but her thoughts kept drifting back to James and Sarah. The more she tried to understand, the less certain she became about what the future held. Then, unexpectedly, Sarah appeared at the cafe. Her eyes met Emily's, and in that brief moment, an unspoken tension passed between them. Sarah's voice was soft but firm. "I don't want to cause pain," she said. "I only want what's right." Emily nodded, struggling to find words. There was a complexity in Sarah's presence. She was not just a figure from the past but someone caught in her own turmoil. Back at home, James and Emily's conversations grew strained. The warmth they once shared was replaced by caution and silence. Emily sensed that James was hiding more than just old memories, something deeper was unfolding. One night, after the children were asleep, Emily sat beside James. The air was thick with unspoken truths. "James," she began quietly, "we need to be honest with each other. Whatever this is, we can face it together." James looked at her, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his guarded exterior. "I'm scared, Emily," he admitted. "Not of losing you, but of what the past might mean for our future." Emily took his hand, steady and sure. She did not have the answers, but she knew one thing: their journey was far from over. The tension between Emily and James grew heavier with each passing day. Their once familiar home now felt like a battleground of silent doubts and guarded emotions. Emily struggled to maintain a sense of normality for the sake of their children, but inside, she was unraveling. James's visits to Sarah increased, and though he claimed they were only about offering support, Emily could sense something shifting beneath the surface. The man who had once promised her forever now seemed torn between two worlds. One afternoon, Emily received a message from Sarah. It was brief but loaded with meaning. "Can we meet? There are things we need to say." Emily hesitated but decided to accept. She met Sarah in a quiet park on the edge of the city. The air was crisp, and leaves rustled beneath their feet as they walked. Sarah spoke first, her voice tinged with regret. "I never wanted to come between you and James," she said. "After David left, I was lost. James was the only person I could turn to. But I realize now that things aren't so simple." Emily listened carefully, her heart pounding. Sarah continued, "I've been holding on to the past, hoping for something that may never be. But I want to do what's right, for all of us." The conversation was painful but honest. Emily saw a vulnerability in Sarah that mirrored her own fears and uncertainties. Returning home, Emily found James waiting. The silence between them was thick with unspoken words. That night, as the children slept, Emily finally spoke. "James, this can't continue like this. We have to decide what we want, together or apart." James looked at her, the weight of the decision heavy in his eyes. "I don't have all the answers," he said quietly, "but I know I love you. I just don't know how to fix this." Emily felt a mixture of hope and despair. Their journey was far from over, and the path ahead was uncertain. The following weeks were a tempest of emotions swirling through Emily and James's lives. Each morning, Emily awoke with a mixture of hope and apprehension. The fragile truce between them seemed to hold, but beneath the surface, uncertainty and pain simmered. James tried to be present, yet his mind was often elsewhere. He would sit beside Emily in the evenings, staring into the flickering flames of the fireplace, searching for words that seemed just out of reach. Emily, too, wrestled with her own feelings, betrayal, love, confusion, and a yearning for clarity. She found solace in her painting, capturing the turbulent colors of her heart on canvas. One chilly morning, James received a phone call that shook their fragile balance. It was from Manchester. Sarah had asked to meet him urgently. The news unsettled Emily deeply. She knew this meeting could change everything. James left that afternoon, promising to return soon. Emily waited, pacing the quiet rooms, her thoughts a tangled web of fears and possibilities. When James returned late that night, his face was drawn and tired, his usual composure shattered. Emily met him at the door. "What happened?" she asked softly. James took a deep breath. "Sarah's situation is more complicated than I realized. She's struggling, emotionally and financially. I want to help, but I don't want to lose you." Emily's heart clenched. "We need honesty, James. No more secrets." He nodded. "I will try. For us." Days passed, and slowly, the walls between them began to crumble. They spoke more openly, sharing fears and hopes. Yet, the shadow of the past lingered, a reminder that healing would take time. One evening, Emily stood by the window, watching the rain fall softly over Bristol. The future was uncertain, but she felt a quiet strength growing inside her. No matter what happened next, she knew she would face it with courage. The fragile peace between Emily and James was shattered one rainy evening when an unexpected visitor arrived at their doorstep. It was David, Sarah's estranged husband, back from his absence with a heavy truth that neither Emily nor James could have anticipated. David's arrival reopened wounds that had barely begun to heal. He spoke of regrets, mistakes, and a desperate need for reconciliation with Sarah. His presence complicated everything further, dragging James into a confrontation with his own sense of loyalty and responsibility. Emily watched as James grappled with conflicting emotions, his duty to Sarah, his love for Emily, and the mounting pressure from David's sudden return. The tension in the household grew unbearable. One night, after a long and painful conversation, James confessed to Emily that he had been hiding more than just his visits to Sarah. There were unresolved feelings and promises made long ago that still haunted him. Emily's heart broke, but beneath the pain, a steely resolve began to form. She realized that to protect herself and her children, she needed to face the truth head-on, no matter how difficult. As the rain poured outside, Emily made a decision. It was time to stop running from the shadows and start reclaiming her own story. The days that followed David's return were filled with difficult conversations and raw emotions. Emily found herself standing at the edge of a precipice, staring into a future that felt uncertain yet full of possibility. James, too, was forced to confront the choices he had made, the love he had divided and the promises he had broken. He realized that the past could not be a refuge from responsibility. In the quiet moments, Emily and James began to rebuild a fragile understanding. It was not forgiveness in the conventional sense, but an honest reckoning with their shared history and the path forward. Emily's strength shone brightest as she focused on her children and herself. She sought independence not just financially but emotionally, nurturing her dreams and passions that had long been dormant. One morning, as the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains, Emily felt a calm resolve settle within her. She was no longer defined by the shadows of the past but by the hope she carried for the future. James watched her with a mixture of regret and admiration. They were no longer the couple they once were, but perhaps they could find a new way to coexist, shaped by truth and mutual respect. As Emily stepped outside into the fresh morning air, she embraced the promise of a new beginning. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready to face it with courage and grace.